Project improvement number 374, we looked at 4 staff-initiated projects. The first one that we'll talk about is 3rd Street Northeast. And we'll talk about more of these obviously at the council meeting, which is kind of a precursor to that. We looked at 2 options. We started at 4th Avenue and went all the way up to the railroad tracks. The first option that we looked at was the first 2 blocks. Those are by far the worst 2 blocks in that stretch. The next option, the second option that we looked at, brought it all the way up to the railroad tracks just to kind of finish off that segment. So you notice in the feasibility report we do have the 2 options to kind of split that out to give us a little bit of flexibility. Again, this is a staff-initiated project. This is an extension of essentially our 2014 and 2015 project. We reviewed that stretch from 4th Avenue up to the railroad tracks. As you'll see in the upcoming slides, it does have a Phaser rating of 2, which is a very poor pavement rating. It's cracked up, broken up. One of the things to note, if you look at the utilities down here, specifically the water main and the sewer main, those are in the early 1900s and the 1915. Storm sewer is not so bad in terms of the 1969. We do have some issues with that because it's the older style of pipe where they don't have a gasket in between the 2 joints. They just kind of flush up together. And whenever you put concrete next to concrete, you're going to start getting some water that comes in through there. So we have had issues where it'll actually drain, if you will, the soil above it will get into the joints and then fall through. So we get potholes right where the joints are at. So we've had to dig down and patch those and correct it. But in terms of the storm sewer, the integrity of it is still structurally sound. It's just the joints that we have seen some issues with. You will notice on our assessment schedule that the storm sewer is assessed at 94%. We have a 50-year life based on our policy. So anything less than 50 years is prorated. So in this case, with it being installed in 1969, it's prorated to 94% of what we would normally assess. All right, looking at the improvements, here you'll notice we are looking at 36 feet curb and gutter width because of the parking that we see in those first 2 blocks. We're looking at going at 36, and we continue the sidewalk on the west side of the street as opposed to sometimes it's on both. We would just put it on the west side only. We'll be looking at reconstructing the water main and the services to the properties as well as the sanitary sewer, and then restoring the boulevards to in kind. If you may recall, the raw water main is being proposed to install on 3rd Street on the west side of the project. So we'll be continuing that all the way up to the railroad tracks. So that would make the installation from the tracks all the way down to 2nd Avenue, which is where we expanded it last year. Excuse me. So looking at the project costs, this is for option number 2. That's our recommended option, you'll notice in the report. So option number 2 comes at $985,599.25, and roughly 25.8% of that would be assessed to the adjacent property. If you have any questions, otherwise we'll jump right into 3rd Avenue right away.
Question for Eric? 3rd Street?
Okay. On 3rd Avenue, you may recall we looked at this parcel or this project last year. Due to funding, we were not able to do this project. I recommended not doing it just because of the way the budgets and everything came out. So we took a look at it again this year. This is from 3rd Street over to 4th Street. The project in 2014 was this 1 block in between 3rd and 4th Avenue. And in 2015, we did the 2 blocks south of there. So this year, the feasibility report is looking at extending this 1 block and reconstructing that 1 block between 3rd and 4th Street on 3rd Avenue. Currently, on that stretch, there is a private water service that serves these 3 houses. I believe this one is served off of 3rd Avenue right now. We recently, that one is still served off of 3rd Avenue, but we didn't install a curb stop off 3rd Street, so we knew that they needed to hook up, they could do it. Project need, that has a Phaser rating of 3, so just slightly better than 3rd Street, but still it's in very poor condition. Again, there's no water main. It's a private service that was installed in 1938. And the sanitary sewer was installed shortly thereafter in 1939. The sanitary sewer does have multiple hairline cracks, but we'll see later on here. So it could potentially have some problems just because one of them is at the top center line, or at 12 o'clock as they call it. So it could have the potential to start breaking. But all in all, in 1939 and 1938, you've used up the life of that infrastructure. Looking at the improvements, again, we're doing full depth reconstruction. This one will be at 32 feet as opposed to 36. These properties don't use the right of way for parking. They all have garages that they use in the back. And so we'll be looking at narrowing that up a little bit. We would continue the sidewalk on the north side of the avenue like it is today, reconstructing the sanitary sewer, installing new water main and services to the property, and then restoring the boulevards in kind of the way that they currently are. So looking at the project costs, that comes in at just over $171,000 with about 17.8% of that being assessed to the adjacent property owners. One thing to note, if you may recall again, whenever we assess a project through the 429 process, we have to have 20% of the project assessed to the property owners in order to bond for that. So we'd be looking at that 20% we'd have to hit once we combine everything together to make that work. Any questions on 3rd Avenue? Okay, looking at the 4th Avenue Northeast component of the feasibility reports, just on the south over here, you'll see this is Coburn's, and then this is 11th Street. Our ponds are up here on 7th Avenue, so we've got our line lagoons. This stretch right in through here, between 9th and 11th Street, it's a 2-block stretch. There's no 10th Street in there. If you drive through there, you'll see on the south side of the road, about 4 feet in from the curb line, there's a crack that goes all the way down the road. That's exactly where the storm sewer was installed in 1989 when they put that in. When they installed it, and they installed the street at the same time, they didn't have necessarily any what we call subcut. There's quite a bit of clay in through that area, and so it has a lot of frosting. You can see it in the wintertime where it will actually move up and down compared to what the utilities are at. So the pavement overall is a phaser of 4. Not great, but not a 2 or a 3 like we've seen in the past on the other ones. The water main is fine. It was installed in 1989. The storm sanitary is good. Biggest issue that we're seeing is that storm sewer, and like I said, it's the frost that's really pushing that up, cracking the pavement, and then when the plows go over it, you've got about an inch lip there between where the storm sewer pushes up the pavement and where they can get, so they can't really clear that portion of the street because of the frost heat with that storm sewer. We looked at 3 options for 4th Avenue. The first option was a 36-foot wide with new curb and gutter. Essentially what we looked at there is putting some laterals in to catch the groundwater to try to get it out of the subgrade so that the subgrade wouldn't do a lot of that frost heat. The next option that we looked at was a 32-foot wide stretch. Again, because of the parking, everybody along there has their driveways, has their garage that they use for parking. Again, we'd be looking at new curb and gutter on all of that, putting drain tile in to relieve that storm water and try to minimize any of the frost. The last option that we looked at, option number 3, only has new curb and gutter on the south side. Because the curb and gutter is in relatively decent condition, we wanted to try to see what we could do to save that portion of it, or that capital investment that we had there. What we ran into, or what we found out, if you keep the curb and gutter on the north side, you could put drain tile either behind it or in front of it, but you still have that same type of soil that's susceptible to frost right underneath the curb. So if you put in a new pavement section with granular soil or sand underneath it, that's not going to move, and you've got curb that's on top of soil that will move, are you going to have this with your curb? And we think the answer is yes. So we are recommending going with actually option number 2, which is a 32-foot wide road, a little bit narrower, still gets you the The new street section all the way through takes care of the drainage issues as well as the subgrade issues, and gets you a new street that will last the length of our assessments and our maintenance policy. So again, the improvements that we're recommending would be a 32-foot wide street, reconstruct the storm sewer, and you'll notice because of the age of the storm sewer, those are assessed to 94%, and the street assessments will be prorated to 80% just because of the age of them. Again, we've got each design limits on both of those. They don't meet them, so we would prorate those based on those ratios. Any questions on 4th Avenue? Oh, I'm going to jump in there. Project cost is $445,000, and we'll be assessing just over 20% on that portion of it. All right,
Questions? Yep.
4th Street is our next component. That's 4th Street Northwest. There's a 1-block stretch from Broadway going north. Mary Lord's Middle School is just north of that move a block. We did First Street, these 2 stretches over here, so we're jumping over 3 blocks to the west with this feasibility report. That section, you'll notice it does have a PASER rating of 6, so it is decent shape, but it does say preservation maintenance is required, so it does have some cracks in it that we'll be looking at. The one area that we're looking at here that's the issue is the water main. It's currently a private line. It's I believe 1.5 inch steel pipe that serves 3 residents down through there. The sanitary was put in 1991. That's in good shape. There is no storm sewer. It's more of a rural section. It does not have curb and gutter to convey the water. But the one thing I want to point out, we have had 2 water line breaks in the last 2 years. City staff has fixed those just because we weren't sure where it was leaking from and what the issue was. And you'll see that coming up here. But that is a private water line in through there. We'd like to get that upgraded to current domestic size or 6-inch size water service so that the city would take ownership of that and actually maintain that. Because technically right now, if there's a break in that line, it should be the property owners that repair that. So looking at the improvements, we would make that one a 36-foot wide street, coming right off of Broadway, going up to the school. It makes sense with the buses coming in through there to have that wider street. We would install a new 6-inch main coming down that stretch for a future connection in 2018. If you recall, MnDOT is coming through there, reconstructing Trunk Highway 27. We'd be looking at stubbing out with this project a 6-inch coming from the north going to the south, so that when they come by in 2018, we can connect that up and actually loop that water main so it's not a dead end. Currently, that private water service is a dead end. It doesn't connect up on both ends. And then we would restore the boulevards and put new sewer lines in as well. The sewer services, when they installed them in, let's say, 91, they had the main coming through and then they put a Y off, but it didn't have any notes in terms of whether or not they extended it to the right of way or just stubbed it out and connected to what was existing. So we'd be looking at digging down, verifying what's there, and if it's the whole clay pipe, we'd be putting PVC to the right-of-way line. If it's PVC, we'd be just leaving it the way it is. Project cost on that segment comes in at just over $207,000 with assessments making up about 19.2% of that project.
Well, for these projects equal up to 20%?
I believe they're a little over 20%, yes. So looking at the summary here, if you add up all of these project costs, I believe it was $1.8 million in projects. We can't afford that. We can't afford much over $1 million. $1 million is usually our target on what we'd like to do in projects every year. The 2 that we are looking at recommending this year would be 3rd Street Northeast, going from 4th all the way up to the railroad tracks, and then doing 4th Street Northwest to get that one stretch taken care of in preparation of the 2018 MnDOT project. Those come in at just under $1.2 million, and the assessments would come in at that 24.6%.
Approximately, what are we paying off on a yearly basis from our bond sales? And what are we paying towards that stuff?
Lori, didn't David indicate we were paying, what, 2.5 a year? $2.5 million a year on our debt or not?
Oh, I don't think it's that.
It's not that much? Okay. That'd be a question for David, but I know we've been targeting that $1 million in terms of bond payments or construction work every year as far as what we can afford. And that's been echoed by David as well.
And we typically don't want to do it as much as we're paying off in debt, because we're trying to get that debt rate down.
True.
You know, we're trying to get that, the amount we're levying for debt down because it's so high. So, you know, our goal is to pay off.
That's
more.
precisely why I asked.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how much we're paying down our debt now as opposed to new projects, and what advantage we might have if we delay some longer. Is it realistic, or is it a pipe dream to say we can get to the spot someday where we can do 2 blocks without bonding?
We might be able to get it to someday, but I think that's a pipe dream quite a ways out there.
And it depends on what you're all going to do too. I mean, we have done 2 blocks if we just did underground work, if we didn't do any surface work. I mean, it depends on
Sure.
what work is needed. So, you know, we've done that, and we've done some stuff at our own cost and with our own crews, and we haven't had to bond for it. But it just depends on the scope of the project and what we're all doing.
Fair answer. I just want to look out into the future and see what we can do different.
And you know, I have those numbers, what we're paying off in our debt in my office. I just don't recall them right offhand, so I can sure that.
Why would they have not replaced the water line when we did that in 1991?
I don't know.
Well, I'm glad you approached that. That looks like a totally botched project right there, despite the time frame and what it's done.
Everything looks in good shape except the water line. So basically, we're sticking in quite a bit of money just to put a water line in for poor customers.
Right. But if history is any indication of what's going to happen, in 2014 in July, we ended up digging down, fixing it. 2015 July, we dug down and fixed it. And you can look on Google as well as Bing, which I've got in the presentations later. You can see both are time stamped, both July of the succeeding year, and we were there digging down and fixing it. So it's something that's continuously reoccurring here. The condition of the pipe, it's getting corroded and it's failing. So whether or not we say, property owner, this is yours, you have to fix it, or we actually do the project and do it right and assess it to the property owners, is what I would recommend, so that we can make that loop and actually get the 6 inch.
So it's prepared for Highway 27.
Correct.
Any questions for Greg on any of the projects? No? Thank you. Anyone got anything else under other? Hearing none, we'll take a 5-minute break. Be back for our other meeting.
Bring your board up.